My name is Travia Fitzpatrick, and some of you know me, but for some of you, we haven't met yet. And in the spirit of mission, I'll share my mission with you, which is I'm on a mission to help you become a more confident version of yourself. And there's never been a better time to get clear on your purpose and your meaning and to confidently communicate who you are to others in the world. Now is more critical than ever to get the confidence and skills that you need to get clear on who you are, what you want out of life, and what your story is. During our special time together in this session, I'd like to take you on a journey of 4 stories about 4 different types of truth. Many people think there's only one kind of truth, and it's that truth of the tangible world and what can be proved. Yet, this is only one kind of understanding. E.F. Schumacher wrote in his book, A Guide for the Perplexed, that there are 4 different types of knowledge based on the pairing of ourselves and the world. It's with the external world and the internal world of appearances. The first field of knowledge is asking ourselves, what is really going on with me in my inner world? This is really about when we ask ourselves, how do I feel? What am I thinking? It's about self-awareness. And it's about understanding that negative or positive self-talk that we all have. And the second field is understanding what is going on in the inner world of other people. And the third field is understanding the question, what do I look like in the eyes of other people? This is paying attention to what others are saying about you, the stories others are sharing, and understanding the feedback. The fourth field of knowledge is when we ask, what do I actually observe around the world around me? Each of these modes of thinking are fundamental to understanding the world around us and how we interact with people, with ourselves, and the world. Each is blind or deaf without the other. And there are 4 truths that are outlined in David Fleming's book, Lean Logic, that help us to understand these 4 fields of knowledge on a deeper level that we just saw in the previous slide. It's those truths that we will explore in our journey together in this session in the form of 4 different stories. The first story is about material truth or objective truth. It is the world of cold, hard facts. It's facts about the unemployment rate, like the study that was just released by a Great Place to Work. Due to COVID, there have been astronomical numbers of layoffs and people leaving the workplace. 80% of those people are women. And it's what we can observe and compare about the world. It's the city we live in, where we work, the color of our hair, how to make a sponge cake, the notes of a musical scale, or whether we went to work today. This truth also comes with what we fill our home with. There's no more stark example of our material life than the possessions we leave behind. Anyone who has had the power and the experience of sifting through a deceased relative's house will have had this experience. There is a bittersweet feeling while going through the keepsake, the joy of looking through photo albums, and apprehensive of the enormity of the task when we trying to decide what to keep and what to throw in the trash. That's what I experienced when I traveled to Los Angeles, California, to pack a moving truck full of my grandmother's things when she passed. The difference between the home that I spent summers in as a child was bleak. The pool I spent hot days lounging in was empty, and the liner had deteriorated from years of exposure in the sun, so that patches of the dirt showed. Her house was only 2 miles away from Disneyland, and every night in the summer when I was a little child, we would climb on top of the roof and watch the fireworks from Magic Kingdom. I'd sit with my 2 siblings in the 70-degree weather on top of the garage, and as we smelt the fresh air, the sky grew dim and the moon magically appeared. It would only be a few minutes before boom, 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 the sky would be filled with fireworks, pink, yellow, red, green, orange. That same roof later on was collapsing. Much of the house had been damaged with water. There were days when it was just too hot for me out in Los Angeles. And that's when she'd say, Travia, go get me a couple of oranges from that tree. I'd bring a couple of oranges and she'd have her knife ready to cut and peel the orange. She'd take the oranges and squeeze them out into her jug. And we would add some sugar inside that jug and make some orange juice. We would sit out in the tree in the shade and relax. It was later on when those same trees had not been pruned for a decade and the fruit had become sour. Inside the house that was once clean and orderly, the porcelain dishes gleamed in the cabinet. By contrast, the walls were now filled with paper and stacked with newspapers and McDonald's packets that my grandfather refused to throw out. Yet there were gems as well, like a doll collection, church lady hats, photo albums, complete bedroom and dining room sets. And you can understand the wealth that was there but unutilized. There were too many treasures to keep. We kept what we could and donated what we thought the Salvation Army would want. The rest went to the landfill in a 30-foot dumpster that we rented. She didn't have enough time to go through it all before she passed. The second truth is around performative truths. These are the things we make real by saying them, like an oath or a promise or a wedding vow. These truths can even be a thought that we share, a powerful affirmation that we will lose weight or maybe quit smoking, find our dream job, or find love. These are truths that shape our character. The oath we make and the promises we keep in the eyes of the world. These include job contracts, agreements, receiving job offers, and our duties at work and to the world. These are intangible truths. They cannot be felt and they cannot be touched. A title or a piece of paper may be signed to signal the occasion, but it is really our actions that make these truths endure. It is a living truth created by the faithfulness of the parties involved to defend it. You're hired. You're fired. I'll be there for you. We are a community, are all examples of this truth. My grandmother, I called her Granny, grew up in Kenlock, Missouri, an all-Black community near St. Louis, Missouri. My great-grandfather built their house there from the ground up with his bare hands. The mayor, years later, sold a large portion of that city to the St. Louis airport to expand. Residents started to sell one by one and move out. The expansion never occurred till this day. The city still sits in ruins where there was once a thriving community. The community ceased to exist when people stopped believing in it. After enough people had left, it just became another place. The house my great-grandfather built was demolished. And after a while, the whole town was demolished. My great-grandmother, Medea, had to move. My granny was offered a full scholarship in nursing, but she declined because her father was dying and the family needed income. Granny ended up working for McDonnell Douglas Aircraft for most of her career as a cook. It was there where she met my grandfather, Papa, and they were married for 40 years. Granny was with McDonnell Aircraft for 2 decades before the company let an older group of employees know that they can either take early retirement or keep their job and move to a different factory in California. Papa was offered a different position, but Granny was laid off. My grandparents took the move out to Los Angeles. Shortly after, her mother, Medea, joined them because of multiple break-ins in her St. Louis home. After losing her position, Granny went back to college to get her bachelor's degree in her late 30s. She got a degree in social work, and she opened a series of halfway houses called United Women in Transition. In all those years, her commitments had defined her to her job, her title, her husband, the woman she served, and she made a commitment that she'd always be there for the people she loved. Story 3. Implicit truths. These are truths that are a matter of viewpoint. They're often in us agreeing to disagree. You ever had one of those situations? For instance, there were two philosophers once that argued over whether a river was ever the same river. One argued that it constantly changes, so it's never the same river, while the other argued that it appeared to change and that it was the same river. They were both ultimately right. Implicit truths are those things that we take time to reflect. We take a step back and we think and we process. Near the end of my grandma's life, she came to live with us in New Jersey. She was having trouble with her liver. My granny had such a big heart. She cared for other people much, much more than she cared for herself. She ran several halfway houses in Los Angeles, and she was constantly on her feet, putting all her efforts into caring for the women of those homes. They were not always appreciative, but most of them were. I learned a lot about life from visiting these halfway houses. They were full of women who had gone to jail for petty, nonviolent crimes. I often remember being confused as to why they had been sent to jail in the first place. As a child, I thought jail was the place for violent criminals and people who were a threat to society. The more I got to spend time with these women, though, the more I appreciated them. They were fun, smart, and sassy. You could feel a sense of community and laughter in the house, especially when all 15 women gathered together at the long white tables for meals. Some had children, and some even had grandchildren. They were all kind to me and my siblings, and they all had a story about how they got off track in their life along the way. They somehow fell victim to domestic abuse or addiction. I specifically remember Monique. I can still hear her voice in my head. Miss Gray, Miss Gray. She called my grandma Miss Gray. And she would say, Miss Gray, you're like the mama I never had. She looked at me and said, Raven, you're so lucky you got a grandma like Miss Gray. They wore her down, though, over the years. My granny spent all her time taking care of everyone else. She didn't leave any energy for herself. Near the end of her life, she came to stay with us in New Jersey because her health was declining. She could barely walk at that point because her ankles were so big and so swollen. When she first came, she had to live on the second floor for a little while because she couldn't get out of bed. We'd bring her meals in bed, and she loved jambalaya and gumbo, but she didn't like vegetables. We made sure she ate them anyway, and she made a rapid recovery. Soon she was downstairs laughing in the kitchen, offering to cook and clean, sharing stories, and peeking over her glasses and pursing her lips. She stayed 3 more months than she had intended. As the summer ended and winter approached, she said she wanted to go back home to Los Angeles. She said it was too cold in New Jersey in the winter and that she had so much work to do. There was so much left that she had to take care of. She had houses to clean and junk to clear out and finances to be sorted out. She didn't want to leave us with a mess to clean up. She said we said she should stay and that she seemed so much happier. She was wanting to go. We were both right. She went home to Los Angeles. She died within 2 months from liver failure. And the last story I'll share with you today is the kind of truth, it's a poetic truth. Narrative truth is in the domain of fairy tales, art, music, poetry, stories, and myths. Myths are commonly misunderstood to be falsehoods, or more generally, are considered stories about real events where the facts have been distorted with the passage over time. But yet, myths are so much more powerful than a generational game of telephone. We map stories onto experiences. We don't get meaning solely from observation. To make decisions in the world, we need both objective truth like facts and narrative truth like stories. One gives us the basis for our orientation in the world, and the other is needed to make sense of the observations and decide. I'll never forget at my grandmother's funeral, she had helped so many women over the years that it seemed like the majority had showed up. When it gave time for them to give a testimony, they hopped out of their seats to get a turn. They stood up to the mic and the line backed around all the way to the back of the church out the door. Women could point to my grandmother and say that that had been the time that their life had turned around. They spoke for hours, telling both sad and funny jokes about her. They captured her humor, her conviction, and her very essence. After 2 hours, they had to cut the line short when only half of the women had spoken because it was already going 2 hours over. I wonder what stories they had left to share. There are four types of truth. Material truth are the domain of facts, photo albums, collapsing roofs, dried up swimming pools, overgrown orange trees. And then there are performative truths, which are the truths that we create for our statements. We are community. I resign. I'll be there for you. The third is the implicit truth. They are the truths that are dependent on the speaker, arguments that can't be settled, agree to disagree. Well, we might call someone proud, but we still respect their conviction to do what they believe is right. Lastly, narrative truths are the truths that capture the human condition better than any statistic or study ever could. They are the stories we tell to our children that are passed down through the generations that guide us and that fulfill our destiny. I'd like to close with a question for you. Take a minute and just close your eyes and fast forward to the end of your life. And you can put in the chat, what is the story that you want passed down around you? What is the story that you want passed down about you? Let's check the chat out. Feel free to put your story, your desired story in the chat. Leave some comments. Okay. Okay, just reflect on that. We're going to take 2 minutes to just reflect on your life, your career, those truths. Think about the end of your life. What is the story you want people telling about you? All right. We've got Jill, that I live my own truth. Awesome. Anybody else want to share in the chat? I would want them to know about my resilience, said Brenda. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Jill and Brenda. Anybody else? What would you want people to know about you? Good afternoon, Travia. She's balanced, taking care of herself and others. Awesome. Okay. That I strive to make the world a better place for my family and my community. Love it, Carrie. I love it. Who's next? Who's next? That I live powerfully without reservation. Allie, love it. You are powerful. Yes. Who else? So you can get a few more. Okay. Okay, great. I love to create and bring beauty into the world. Awesome. Stories of learning and helping others, doing things to do things that they didn't think they could do. Awesome. Martin, Kanadi, awesome. Beautiful. Jillian, that people felt loved and seen by me. That even to the end, I managed to surprise them in good ways with my thoughts and ideas. I love that. Joanna, that I love myself, my community, and making tasks easy. Hi, Joanna. Good to see you here. Awesome. I love it. Beautiful. All right. Closing activity before we hand this over to Carrie. Close your eyes and just roll your shoulders back. Relax and just soak in that future story of yourself. Soak in the future story that you typed down or that you thought about. And think about the positive emotions associated with that story. My closing question is, who do you need to become to tell that story? Who do you need to become to tell that story? All right. Thank you for coming today. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Carrie, who's going to walk you through personal branding and your digital presence. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Thank you so much, Travia. Good to see you. And I heard the baby in the background. Travia is a new mother the second time around and joining us with a newborn. So that's commitment. And how amazing was all of this? It's so hard to go after a powerhouse lineup of amazing people. But as Zakiya says, we all have our own unique gifts. And so, I'm coming to you with my gifts and going to try to be as unapologetic as possible, knowing that you all just, had some really great experiences. And so with these uncertain times, there is a lot of speakers now have to be our own IT department. So Travia, just hit the leave button at the very top of your screen and you should be able to exit. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's how we do here. We're having to manage everything in these uncertain times. I'm sure so many of you feel that way. And so I'm going to close us off by talking about how we can, now that you've explored your why, you've explored the power of stories, you've done some exercises to kind of dig into your values, your mission, your gifts. We're going to expand that and try to figure out how we can authentically carry who you are, your why, your purpose into the digital space. So I'm trying to look at you all, in the camera. And so the stream's going to be a little bit off to the side. So you might see me look off to the side to just stay present with you as you chat things. So thank you, everyone. My name is Carrie Maultsby Lute. For those folks that don't know me, I think almost everybody does. I've been working in marketing and communications for a while, teaching here at Mills College, as well as at Presidio Graduate School. And I love talking about personal branding, the power of LinkedIn, and then how to increase your influence. So this is our agenda for today. And I'm going to dive in. So I've been doing the shift map work for 5 years now. I, share community with Zakiya. We go back years. I saw her work from a distance and just always thought that she was super dynamic. And then I was really honored when I had the chance to work with her when she was developing her shift map concept and also her book. And so I've attended not one, but like maybe 4 or 5. These are all my shift maps I've collected over the years. And what's really powerful about these are that I get to see how themes stay the same and also how certain things evolve or change. But it's really amazing how things actually are lasting. And it's also just fascinating how some of these words that I've used within this work with Zakiya pop up in other aspects of my life. Like when I'm doing my elevator pitch and someone catches me off guard and says, what do you do? And I dig and I think back to the shift map. And so this work is really powerful when you, like to Zakiya's point, articulate this and throw it unapologetically into the world. So there's a circle in the very middle of this shift map. Circles are powerful universal symbols. They represent so much meaning to various cultures, notions around totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, timeless. A circle has no beginning and no end. And so it's really powerful that it belongs in two of my favorite frameworks, which include the shift map that we went through by Zakia, as well as the golden circle by Simon Sinek. Anyone here heard of the golden circle? Just put in chat if you have or not, if you've seen Simon Sinek's concept, his very popular TED Talk surrounding the golden circle. Anyone say? You can say no as well. So the golden circle, it's a framework that master communicators use to share their ideas, values, and to connect with people on an emotional level. So Simon Sinek, in his very popular TED Talk, uses the example of Apple computers. So he highlights the power of the framework by showing that most computer companies communicate from the outside in. So they communicate their what first, then their how, and then their why. So it might go something along the lines of, tell me, we make computers. They're beautiful, they're simple to use, want to buy one, right? Very uninspiring. But Apple communicates by saying, by doing the opposite, communicating from the inside, their heart, the core, where, you really sit as a company. And they say, everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. How we do this is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use. We just happen to make great computers and want to buy one. So by turning this in and reframing how things are delivered, it makes it a lot more compelling. And so when we think of some of our best brands and marketing that we come across in the world, because we're all consumers and we all see marketing, right? It resonates with us on an emotional level. It usually, sometimes if it's doing a great job, it might inspire us to get off the couch and to go play tennis and to dream. And to self-actualize, our greatest dreams. So it's really driven by our limbic brain, right? Which is the central portion. It's a portion that controls emotion, memories, and arousal. And I love that Travia talked about, the different types of stories, especially the narrative story being the one that's most compelling, the one that really touches into our limbic brain. And so the power of starting with why is validated by neuroscience and the evolution of our brain, right? If we can tap into this limbic brain, we are much more likely to connect with people and have them connect with us emotionally. Whereas the neocortex is that more rational part of the brain that, to Travia's point, appeals to a different type of story. This appeals to logic, numbers, data. And so there's a lot of power when you can combine both the message that hits our limbic brain and that enables us to want to move with emotion while also sharing data. So an example of this, my what? I'm an educator. Right? My how, I teach marketing and entrepreneurship to college students. Okay. But my why, this is my real why. I educate and create wealth for underrepresented people so that the world can be more equitable. And so this is, you see that there's no role or job title in that. It is just, it's so large that I could be doing a range of things and it could relate. I could be, teaching in college like I'm doing now, or I could be working with someone on, finances or building communities of housing. I could be doing so many various things and it would still be relevant. So I think the why is a lot more inspiring than my what or even my how. And I think it's best summed up by this quote by one of my very favorite quotes by Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So some of my students have seen this because I love to bring it to class as well to kind of set the groundwork. But to me, this also is an example of some of the data, some of the things, the detail that you do will be forgotten after you have enough shared stories and experiences you make people feel a certain way. So that's how we're going to move forward, and how I think about things as it relates to your personal brand. Which brings me to this question. What words come to mind when you hear the term personal brand? Just type it in the chat. When you hear this term, what do you think of or feel even? Or what's your definition of it? I'll give y'all a few moments to put in chat. Identity, personal morality, okay, and experience, professional identity, representation in the world. Katrina, nice. Limiting, oh wow, see, normally there's some ickiness, absolutely. I love that, a way to present values and goals. Rigidity, yes, so something that feels like it's not flexible, like it's overly rigid. All those things. Oftentimes, folks talk about feeling commodified and the issues surrounding that, right? Living in this world where everything is marketized and it can feel capitalistic, as Gail says. Yes, and so all of those are true. But I see brand, as it relates to your personal brand, as the intersection of, as shown in this Venn diagram, how you see yourself, which is powerful, right? What are the stories that you tell yourself? Because those stories are likely also going to show up in your life, which is how other people see you. So somewhere at the intersection is how you see yourself, how others see you, and then there's your personal brand. It's a combination of both those things. So if personal brand is reputation, then personal branding is about influence, right? It's about marketing and packaging yourself, your career, your experience. And again, it might seem a bit commodified, but the way I look at it is it's that unique blend of the skills, the gifts, as we learned earlier, and you work through exercises with Zakia to tap into some of your gifts and also some of your values as a person, what your mission is in your life and what your goals are. All of those things add up to influence and who you are. And it's about sharing that with others. So how do we build our brand influence in a way that feels authentic to us in a world that's so digitized, with tools that sometimes we're not comfortable with or not happy about? So I'll say these 5 things. Find your why, or 4 things. Find your why, build your voice, highlight your authentic self, and lead with your vision. So we're going to get into finding your why. This is the purpose for your existence, the reason you wake up, the vision that you have for your life. And again, we've explored these in exercises earlier. And I love this image because it just, reminds me of, what's your North Star? Which direction are you going? And really holding true to that. Oh, whoa. Okay. My screen hasn't been on this entire time, y'all. Whoa. So sorry. How did that happen? All right, let's, these technical problems. Let me go into my Chrome tab and I will share my screen. IT, it's so bad when all right, can y'all see? All right, okay, so this is, let's go back here. Well, actually, we're just gonna keep it moving. So this is our, nope, I wanted it on. So this is the formula for getting your why. So this is from the book by Simon Sinek, Finding Your Why, to blank so that blank. So to me, it's this: to educate and create wealth for historically marginalized people so that the world can be more equitable and peaceful. So you saw this. This is actually a format that you can use. You can take some of the verbiage that you've created earlier from today and try to think through this, because this is essentially like your elevator pitch. It's when you are, someone asks you, what's your why? Like, what do you want to do with your life? Who are you, right? You can just pull from this. It's really powerful to create this for yourself. And then add it to your LinkedIn profile. We're going to talk a little bit more about the power of LinkedIn, but the goal is to, especially when we live in this, new environment in which we can't even see people, we're doing everything remote. How are you showing up online? And building your voice, right? This is really important. The heart of building influence is actually sharing. Really important part, because sharing is like, back to unapologetically putting who you are into this world. In order to connect with others and to build that community, you have to share. And so share your knowledge. It is a way to achieve immortality. Love this quote by the Dalai Lama. And I always use the example of you are enough. Oftentimes people might say, I'm not enough. Like, I don't, I haven't done enough. I don't have I don't have a title. I don't have a lot of wealth. What is it that people can look up to me for? And to me, if you're just a few levels ahead of someone, you have something to share. So the example of like Warren Buffett, if I'm a beginning investor, I would not want my first call or my first, informational interview talking to investors to be with Warren Buffett. I want to actually wait a little bit and talk to someone who's just been doing it a few years more than myself, so they can tell me what apps they did, how they got into it quickly, so just knowing that, I want to talk to Warren Buffett too, but I also want to talk to that new person who doesn't have 30 years of experience, right? I want to find that blog or that podcast that's geared for me as a beginner. So you are enough. Always remember that. You have something to share with people professionally. And then moving on, highlighting your authentically crafted self. What does this mean? There's so much talk about, commodification of self. We might feel like we're, an inanimate object for sale, as though, this is, something that, we should preserve. But you can create a personal brand in an authentic way that aligns with your values. And so I show these examples because more than ever, representation matters. It's about radical inclusion. Earlier, right before I got on the webinar for today, they showed that Victoria's Secrets is closing 50 stores. And yes, I'm sure part of that is due to the pandemic, but I think a good part of that is because we're over the Victoria's Secrets era. We do not want, these Eurocentric ideals of people that aren't real. We want to see, people that come in various shapes and sizes and colors and religions and creeds. The Mad Men era is gone. So, and there's a lot of power in thinking about how you can get to your minimum viable audience. Zakia's touched on that when she talked about, tribes and building communities. So if you can get 1,000 people to pay you $10 a month, you would make $10,000 a month. If you can get 100 people to pay you $100 a month for something, you'd have $10,000. So you don't have to sell to millions of people. You just need to find your tribe, and your tribe is out there. Because you have friends, and there's people like you that are awkward, that are, that cynical or whatever, way that you are feel about yourself that might make you feel like you're an outsider and that there's not a lot of folks like you. There is, a sizable number. So representation matters. Find your tribe, and we're moving on. Who's awkward, right? Moments like this, when I think I'm sharing my screen and I'm not. So embracing your challenges. Richard Branson is one of my favorite kind of big Fortune 500 type CEOs. And I love him. I appreciate him so much because he talks about having dyslexia and the issues that he had, with learning as a young person, and how he used those challenges to actually create better businesses and better experiences for people. And so he, again, used that as his way to differentiate. So again, tap into those challenges, be okay with sharing them, because people will relate. But you're an introvert. What happens when you're an introvert, right? The life is going to be much harder, so they say, but not really. It's bigger than you. Tapping into the fact that whatever your purpose, your why, the core of who you are, what you just uncovered with Zakia, that's bigger than you. All the comments that I saw in the chat regarding what you want your life's legacy to be, what Travia, that phenomenal question she asked at the end, it didn't relate to you. It related to things outside of yourself. So really tuning into what can you talk about and what can you focus on that's bigger than you? Leading with your vision. All of these leaders, Rosa Parks, Mahatma Gandhi, Barack Obama, all people that consider themselves introverts. And then again, back to my favorite quote by Maya Angelou. You can actually see it this time, so that's great. But this is how, to me, introverts can have power, because oftentimes introverts make people feel a certain way, and because they have that EQ down in terms of connecting and listening to people, and so use that to your power. That could be your superpower. And then also, if you still want to have more data and more techniques, I recommend this book called Quiet by Susan Cain. I think she did a great job of starting like this quiet revolution, allowing folks that consider themselves introverts or ambiverts to really be able to utilize their power in the workforce. And who do you admire? I'm talking to you, Mikal. I remember you in class, and you are always such a wonderful orator and someone who struck me as so extroverted, but we all are introverted in our own ways, and it's so interesting how it shows up. Who do you admire professionally? Why? What adjectives or words come to mind? I think this is also something that's very powerful when you're thinking about, how do I show up online, especially authentically, in a way that doesn't seem performative or doesn't seem like it's all about me, right? Look to those people that are doing great work and show up authentically. I think that's, you can model yourself, and it doesn't have to be one person, because one person is not going to bring you everything. I learned that from a mentor, and I really appreciated that, is that when you think about mentors and people that you might admire or look up to, you're not going to probably admire every aspect of their life. You might admire one mentor because they've been married for 30 years and they have a lovely family work-life balance. And you might admire or look up to another mentor because maybe they're just really creative, or, and they've committed their lives to people outside of their family because maybe they don't even have a family. There's so many different ways that we can model ourselves after composites of people. So moving on. And how do we increase our influence in your brand through LinkedIn? So now we're going to get into the LinkedIn portion of this. We can create a content strategy plan. If you're really hardcore, you can create a marketing calendar. You can engage with influencers in this online space. And you can also measure your activity, so you're tracking things over time. These are very technical ways that you can build your influence. For those people that want to write down clear takeaways, these are some of the ways that you can try to build, carry your story that you've developed, putting it into this space online, and also perhaps having some accountability, right? And the content strategy plan and the marketing plan will give yourself accountability. It's not easy to do. Most people don't do it. But if you do it, it can slowly feel more natural, and that's a great way to build your influence. So into the power of LinkedIn. There's 706 million people on LinkedIn from over 200 countries and regions worldwide. Wow, that's amazing. You can find a business partner. You can find a job. Has anyone ever found a job on LinkedIn? Put it in chat. Say yes. How has LinkedIn changed? How have you used LinkedIn? Any success stories? Have you used it to reach out to recruiters? Have you had any informational interviews from it? Have you hired anybody? How have you used LinkedIn in your life? No one's ever used it? Oh, nice. Reconnected with Kimberly Bryant from Black Girls Code. That's awesome. Being able to connect with leaders, people that are doing great work. I used it to research a company I applied to work for. Awesome. And so what I would say is definitely reconnecting to past coworkers. Olga, with that, I would try to figure out who at Mills College or any other school that you may have gone to works for that company, and then connect with some people that you share the same alma mater, and then try to get a referral. So that's the power of LinkedIn, is actually taking it further and being able to connect with people directly. Exactly. Prospective employees, employers. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I've actually used LinkedIn I've hired people from LinkedIn when I was, doing running marketing for a startup, and we needed someone to do ads for us. And this person, now we remained friends over a decade, and now she's a, published author, New York Times bestseller, so it's amazing how you can connect and who you can connect with. So use it. LinkedIn is a valuable tool for job seekers, as we know. And interesting stat, 80% of jobs are not posted. So that means they're coming from internal referrals. 60% of hires at Salesforce are from employee referrals. And if you don't already know someone, network until you do. So again, LinkedIn's a really powerful platform. Allows you to connect with people, not robots. So we're going to spend just the last, five or so minutes talking about the about section, and how you've heard from Zakia about a range of currencies that you have as people, and you've also written down some of your values and done that work. And then we've heard from Travia about the different types of stories that can be told, which is amazing. There's so many different ways that you can choose to tell your story and craft your story. And so the About Us section from LinkedIn, as we know, is one of the first sections people see, right? When you're trying to connect with someone and evaluate who they are. So we're going to deconstruct relatively quickly some different types of profiles. So if you've ever felt stuck on your LinkedIn profile, let's talk about this. In fact, who here feels like they, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about your About Us profile on LinkedIn? On a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling about yours right now? Mine is 0. I'm sure it's not that bad, Wanda, not unless you just don't have one. Okay, so 6, 5, 2, 2, 5, 4, 5, 5, 7. Wow, okay. This is great. Nia, you're so specific. I love it. 5.67. We got a 4. Okay, so there's a lot of room for improvement. No one said a 10, although I bet some of you all have amazing profiles, and all of ours can use some fixing up. So hopefully this will, help, to provide some different ways that you might be able to, I guess, tackle this subject. So when we talk about profiles, we see that there is the seasoned professional. I used to have examples, but my husband said that they were way too long. So I condensed everything to one slide. So hopefully you can envision with me without seeing something. I'm a visual person, so I like to have slides for everything. But the seasoned professional profile would be used if you have a wealth of experience. So this is probably someone who's been working over 15 years, maybe even longer than that, but who really just has some really powerful experience to highlight. So you're leading with all the different jobs you've held at, really phenomenal organizations, or all the accomplishments that you've had that, people can connect with, because again, you're a seasoned professional. Won't relate for most students oftentimes, right, who are building their careers. Then there is the storyteller profile. And so with this one, we're trying to paint a vivid picture about our passion for something, or create a powerful and memorable story. I saw a profile that led with someone talking about when they were escaping a war-torn country as a child and what that experience was like, detailing that. And then weaving it into when they, were able to come to the, United States, go to college, fall in love, get married, and now they are, doing HR in this company, and they love helping people through traumatic experiences, right? So the storyteller used his own personal story to show challenges that he had gone through in life, and also the resilience really comes through in that story. And you feel like you connect with this person. You read this profile, and you're like, "Wow! Like I want to get to know this person." And you learn so much from him telling his complete story. So it wouldn't be probably relevant to every industry. If you are applying to jobs in finance or industries that might be a little bit less creative, they might have more right mind thinkers, or left, no, it's left, I think, left folks with the left side brain. You might not want to get quite as creative as that, but just thinking about how can you tell a story, perhaps, especially as it relates to, we know that our the way our brain works, that limbic brain, that emotion, the side of us that loves to be inspired by emotion can benefit from the storyteller approach to this. And so moving into the creative type. So this is something in my example that likely recommended more for people that are going after design type rules, where you might play with the formatting of your summary. So you're just, using words as though they are almost poetry, and you're just doing things that you normally wouldn't see done. What can you do that would make someone say, "Wow, I've never seen that before"? That's the creative type. Moving into number 4, the comedian. So this person can use humor or witty self-deprecation to quickly enable people to connect with you and view you as approachable. If you're someone who's funny, maybe some of you put that as your gift, that you love to make people laugh and to lighten spaces that are normally heavy. What can you do to insert your humor in your profile, and do it in a way, obviously, that is professional? And then moving into 5, we have most spirited. That's the example of someone who might go hard for their company. So I've seen profiles where it's like, if you work at, LinkedIn and you love it, you just might, have everything that's all about LinkedIn, all the things that you do at LinkedIn, all the different resource groups you're connected to. And so, that could be, if you feel like you're going to be a lifer somewhere and you love your company that much, that might be, and maybe even if you have limited experience, perhaps that's all, you only worked at one company your whole entire life. You can decide to just go hard there. And lastly, blend at your own risk. These are all just different ways that you can look at it, kind of different, models that you can use, but really create something that feels unique to yourself and that feels authentic. Use some creativity, use some storytelling, insert a little bit of humor, and hopefully you'll be able to take some of the work that you've done with this amazing shift map right here. I have, like I said, 4 of them, and think about how you can tell your story, in reflecting on Travia, the various types of stories, and then knowing that now, more importantly, we have to share our stories in a digital format. And I focused on LinkedIn because it's a very powerful community for people that are in business or entrepreneurs. But I understand that there's other channels. There's Instagram. Growing in importance is TikTok, depending on your age, and so there's ways that, we didn't really focus on some of those more, the channels that are a bit more focused on business to consumer, and less about the professional connection networking side. But I know that you can adapt, who you are for those spaces, especially if what you're doing is important, and those are important channels for reaching people. So we're gonna finish up. We only have 2 more slides here. So tooting your own horn. This is something, who feels comfortable when you like are invited to do a speaking engagement, or you get a promotion, or you start a business? Are we comfortable tooting our own horn? How does that feel? Honk honk toot toot. I love this chat. You all are on fire. It's hilarious. Nope. You have to do it. That feels awkward, right? Like, that's awkward. Do you concede it sometimes? I can't toot. It's like, what, me? A natural controlled bragging. Yes, controlled bragging is that's a great term. Yeah, so emoji, like, just hit the head. Where's the stage? Shine your light. So a few of you are more comfortable than others tooting your own horn. Most people, there's some unnaturalness to it. And so I would say that tooting your own horn is definitely an art and a science. I actually know this person, really great human, and thought that he did a really great job of tooting his own horn. Let me see if I can read it. I might have to look over to the side. I'm seeing more lawyers being open about the challenges of their practice and also collectively finding ways to manage them. I spent this weekend in Austin at home at the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association. Great way, right? You lead so high level when you're, talking about just what you're seeing within this system, this community, right? So you're you're making the community the hero within this example. I'm loving seeing all the lawyers talking about their challenges, and then you go into, but I'm talking at this thing. And so then you're kind of showing the work that you're doing because people care about what you have to say. So I'd say capture those examples of when people are tooting their own horn that you relate with, right? When you see those, make a folder and capture those. So that way, when you have to toot your own horn, you can do that in a way that feels comfortable for you. That might actually be the best advice I've given all today. I don't know. And then lastly, spend more time clapping for others. Who here, maybe you can do a hallelujah or a yes or whatever you want to do in the chat. Who here has, those folks that are on social, they post, but maybe they never comment or engage with anyone, but they're always posting. So you don't want to be that person. I just think that in this space, when you go on to LinkedIn or any social media platform, spend time engaging directly with the community and talking about all the great things that they're doing. So when they post comment or when they have status updates, especially those that are asking for engagement, engage with them, build relationships. So spend more time clapping for others than you do tooting your own horn. And that is it. Thank you, Toot Toot. Be awesome. And with that, I invite my other speakers, Zakia and Travia, back to the stage. I would love to have you all join for 15 minutes of a wrap up and just questions that y'all might have. So hopefully you can join by just, sharing your screen and audio. Easy to forget to do. Hey, Travia.
Hi.
Awesome, you're back. Zakia, you here?
Yes.
I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
I am back.
Excellent. Okay, let me stop my share. There we go. Okay. Awesome. So now let's open it up. Any questions? Let's see if we can do this, invite people to actually come on the screen with us. Any questions, comments? Would love to have you join us for conversation. Caesar, hey, you want to step up?
Hey, can you hear me?
Hi. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Great examples today. I really appreciate that you shared that example of the gentleman who was first giving credence to the tribe first before he started talking about himself. Because
Yeah.
segue, because it's very difficult for people to just find it within themselves to just be open about what's great about them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's hard to do that. I think that kind of goes against our cultural norms, right? We're not supposed to brag. I mean, like literally as children, we're taught not to do that. Bragging is bad, and that person is arrogant or conceited. So I think within as adults, we're taught that, we have to do that in order to get influence. So it's about, trying to figure out how to do that in a way that makes sense. I don't know, ladies, do y'all have any questions about, or not questions, responses, or ways that you've seen it done well, tooting your own horn?
I think that one of the best quotes I've ever heard regarding tooting your own horn is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so
Hey,
always finding a way to show how much you care or that you respect what someone's doing, or just like, hey, that looked really cool, or I saw you on the podcast and you were amazing. Just showing that you care about the person. Because people like to work with people, to hire people that they know, like, and trust. I remember one time I was with some recruiters and some HR folks from Disney, Pixar, and Lucasfilm, and I asked the people there, I said, all things equal, when it comes down to two candidates, they had the exact same experience, education, qualification, who do you hire? One of them said, I asked myself, who would I rather sit next to on a plane with?
Mm-hmm.
The other one said, who would I rather have lunch with? And I thought that was so powerful because we're all human at the end of the day. When people can see other people's humanity, and when you make me feel important and special, I like you.
Travia,
Yeah, how about you? You can add. Yeah.
that quote, oh my God, people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. I'll just tell you really quick, and I'll leave you with this, okay? Because I know there's plenty of people who want to get on with you. But if you look at my LinkedIn profile, the first statement that I have, and it's completely braggadocious, but the idea of it is I've helped this many people, right? So I think the first line is something like engaged 11,000 clients and counting. So when attorneys or law firms look at my profile, they say, "Oh my God, this guy's really cracking. He's got some numbers, right?" But again, like to Travia's point, well, they hopefully they understand how much I care because that's what's important to me is the clients who I've engaged with. So I'll leave you with that, and I hope that helps.
Yeah, I particularly love that, Caesar, because I just feel like it speaks to the importance, though, that data plays, right? In some of these narratives, especially in those industries, like showing how many people you've helped, being able to quantify that's powerful. So thank you.
Thank you, sister.
Anybody else? Who's next?
I think Mikal's trying to get in. I'm not sure. Bounced out of session waiting for approval.
And Bev, do you have audio? See some folks who are starting to have some challenges. Gail says it feels more natural to me to approach sharing my accomplishments by expressing my gratitude that I've been able to facilitate X, help X. Yes, I think we all, that's a common way of looking at it.
I could just tap in on that while we're waiting to bring someone else to the stage. I also just want to lift up sometimes how it's difficult for particularly BIPOC communities, for folks who identify as women, to talk about who they are, right, in a way that feels affirming. There's definitely something to say around imposter syndrome and also kind of having confidence. Sorry, there's like some background noise. So I wanted to just kind of lift that up. And then also I wanted to say is that, you know, so the way I've been able to transform that for myself as someone who suffered from imposter syndrome and how to toot my own horn is recognizing that my work is bigger than me and my work is part of my mission. And so I can talk about my mission all day long because it makes it more than me. And so I think when you're doing work that's bigger than you, you don't have the fear and some of the same reservations about sharing it. It's almost the opposite. You just are like on a mission, literally, right? To share it with as many people as possible.
Love that.
Yeah. We have a question in the chat from Imani. What's some advice you would give to those of us who feel overwhelmed by engaging with social media? Carrie, do you have any thoughts on that with the LinkedIn?
I feel like Zakia is the best at answering this, actually, because you have that content calendar for yourself. Zakia is doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing, and I also know that you have practices to make sure that that's sustainable. So I would love for you to take that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Imani. I don't know where you are in your range, but as someone that's above 40, I will say, I definitely find that some of my clients that are a little older in particular struggle with how to really bring the physical them into the digital space, right? Because that's essentially what we've been called to do now. Our work, as powerful it is in person, almost isn't fully recognized because we live in this digital realm. You have to have that digital equivalent of who you are, right? And social media gives you the opportunity to constantly engage people, kind of to bring them into your own world, which domain, right? Your own kind of digital space, your website, etc., as well as kind of bring in people who maybe you wouldn't meet. So one of the things I think is really going back to your gifts and your values and figuring out how do you like to communicate, right? If you love to talk and you don't want to be seen, rock out with Clubhouse. If you really like producing videos, maybe look at YouTube Live or IGTV. If you like to perform, look at Twitch. I think you don't have to have a digital footprint on a ton of places and platforms. You really have to find the ones that work for you. And I think it's better to start on one or two that you really are committed to working with rather than trying to feel like you have to be all things to all people. And we know you can share things on other sites and hook it up like that. So for me, I definitely use a content calendar. I've found that my biggest kind of tools are Instagram as well as my email list. And I also just want to big that up again. Ultimately, you want to be getting people's individual emails. You want to be able to communicate directly to your folks. So that's always the goal. You're using social media to bring them into your hyper niche. And so you're utilizing your bio, and on a LinkedIn or Instagram profile, for example, to kind of get them into, your tribe and your newsletter list where you can then communicate with them. So I do a content calendar. I program it. And I'm kind of like set it and forget it. I rather take 2 hours and program my social media for the whole month. And then when I go online, I don't have to scroll the feed. I can just literally look at the engagement and who's commented, and I can talk directly to my tribe, maybe check my messages, and I'm out, right? Or there might be other times where I'm like, I'm just going to scroll the feed, but it's not connected to my work. So, I do digital fast. I batch my work. So I'm doing work that's very concentrated, but it's not all the time. So I think it really comes down to that lifestyle design, right? You having to design a life for yourself. You might have to get yourself hyped up before you get on, right? If I'm not in a good mental space, social media is not the place for me because it's the commercial of the day. I don't want to see everybody's beautiful pictures doing beautiful things. My mindset might not be there, right? So when I engage, I'm very intentional and conscious about it, and I have a strategy around it. And I will lastly say, I think also part of that mission, it's our mission to feed the algorithm a different story, right? So again, if you look at the work as bigger than you and it's part of your mission, if the feed is going to give you death, doom, and gloom, I want to put some inspiration, some activation, some empowerment in your life, right? So I'm also feeling like I'm using it as my own tool. I'm wielding the power of social media to put something different out into the cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
Great question. How do you go about self-promotion without feeding the ego? Mikal. I can start, and then we can chime in if you want. Mikal, one of the things that I would recommend when you are afraid to talk about yourself or you think about the context of social promotion or self-promotion rather, is I would think about the meaning behind it and your why. Going back to that golden circle that Carrie mentioned, is why are you doing something? One of the things I realized in my work is when people have a speaking engagement or they need to go to a job interview or they need to talk about themselves, there's a lot of anxiety and fear that comes up. And I've learned that it's often because we don't have a philosophy on why we're doing it. We don't have a reason for why we're speaking, why we're listening, why we're leading people. And so sometimes we get nervous because we get disconnected with that purpose. And so I would say get reconnected with that golden circle, create a meaning behind it. I'll give you an example. So I speak a lot and I coach people in public speaking and job interviews. And my why behind speaking is I believe great speeches can transform the world. I believe great speeches can transform communities. And I lead with my why. And I think about people like Martin Luther King who have transformed the world through speeches. It also helps me to focus and not spend time doing other things that are distracting because it's so easy to get distracted. So many companies and people who are trying to get your attention day in and day out. And so keeping focus on your why, you only have a certain amount of brain power and energy too. And so it's going to keep you more energetic and focused. Anybody else want to chime in?
I think it's like a quandary. I don't know that will necessarily solve it, because it is interesting as people do better, I wouldn't say better work, but gain more influence, right, for the movements that they're leading and for the work that they're doing, and the equity that they're actualizing or the social justice that like they're actualizing. I feel like they get harder to reach for so many of us, right, because they're pulled in so many directions. And so then sometimes it can seem as though that national figure now might have an ego, right, because we can't talk to that person. They're outside of arm's reach. And so I do think it's an interesting quandary about just as you gain more influence, and then how that self-promotion angle kind of comes about that, as you recognize the power and the influence that you have, and how that naturally can feed our ego as humans, right? We're human, we can't get away from that feeling. So Mikal, I think it's interesting point, and I think that just focusing on the community and on the work that you're doing, hopefully that will enable you to not feed the ego too much as you gain more influence. So yeah, that's kind of.
I actually want to add another story to that. I was recently working with a client who told me that he was no longer listening to his staff, and that he was working with him to work on his listening skills and his leadership skills. And he was a big visionary person with this data dump to his staff, and he had that realization that he was no longer connecting. And so he worked on a personal philosophy around listening, the topic of listening. Because you can have a why and a personal philosophy around niches that you interact with on a daily basis, like marketing. Like I love marketing because X, or I love design because Y. I love speaking because X, Y, and Z. And so whatever your topic is, Mikal, you can have a personal philosophy around that. And his philosophy was, I listen with a beginner's mind. Because when he was earlier in his career, he listened all the time. He was always asking questions, always curious, always trying to connect with people. At some point, he stopped doing that. The further and higher he moved up. And so that's an example of how you can use that in real time.